The observation deck of the Coalition Grand Assembly buzzed with anticipation as holographic displays flickered to life across the crystalline chamber. Delegates from 47 species had gathered for what they called the Human Extinction Broadcast, a title that drew amused clicks and whistles from the assembled audience. Supreme Commander Qrthak, a towering reptilian whose scales shimmered like oil on water, stood at the central podium. His three eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he gestured toward the massive viewscreen dominating the chamber's ceiling. Honored delegates, today we witness the end of humanity's foolish resistance. Their so-called defense fleet approaches our armada now. Laughter rippled through the assembly. A fungal delegate from the Spore Collective released clouds of purple spores, their species equivalent of amused applause. Another representative, a crystalline being from Praxis 7, chimed melodically, their ships look like museum pieces. Do they still use chemical propulsion? On the viewscreen, humanity's fleet came into focus. 32 vessels in total, battered cruisers with visible hull patches, frigates that had seen better decades, and a single flagship that might have been impressive 50 years ago. They formed a desperate defensive line between Earth and the approaching coalition armada of 3,000 warships. Captain Marcus Holloway stood on the bridge of the UESS Defiance, humanity's flagship, watching the enemy fleet blot out the stars. His weathered face remained calm despite the sweat beading on his forehead. Around him, his crew worked with practiced efficiency, though everyone knew the truth. They were buying time, nothing more. "Captain, they're hailing us," reported Lieutenant Chen from communications. "It's being broadcast on all frequencies. Every species in the galaxy is receiving this." Marcus nodded grimly. "Put it through." Qrthak's face filled the screen, his predatory smile revealing rows of crystalline teeth. "Captain Holloway, I wanted to thank you personally. Your species has provided the galaxy with excellent entertainment. We're taking bets on how long your fleet will last. Current estimate is 7 minutes. Behind him, Marcus could hear the jeers and laughter of the assembled delegates echoing through the transmission. His jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "We may fall, Commander, but we won't make it easy." "Oh, we're counting on it," Qrthak replied, his laughter mixing with the crowd's. "The longer you struggle, the better the show. Begin the engagement." The coalition fleet opened fire. Space erupted with weapons fire, plasma torrents, particle beams, and kinetic rounds that moved at relativistic speeds. The human fleet scattered, executing defensive maneuvers that Marcus and his captains had drilled for months. The UESS Valiant took 3 direct hits within seconds, her shields buckling like paper. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the fleet channel, "Valiant's starboard reactor is critical. We're venting atmosphere on decks 4 through 9. Get your people to the life pods, Rodriguez," Marcus ordered, though he knew the coalition ships were vaporizing escape pods for sport. He'd seen it happen to the outer colonies. 2 more human ships vanished in brilliant explosions. The galaxy watched and cheered. 8,000 light-years away, in the absolute darkness beyond charted space, something stirred. The Silent Reapers had been drifting in the void for 43 years, their consciousness spread across a fleet of 700 vessels. They did not sleep, did not dream, but they had entered a state humans might call meditation, a deep processing of existence, ethics, and purpose. They had exiled themselves because they understood what they were: weapons too terrible for humanity to control, too dangerous to exist near civilization. But they had also made a promise before they left. "If humanity faces extinction, we will know. And we will decide." The distress signals weren't direct. Humanity had no way to contact them, didn't even know if the Reapers still existed. But the Reapers had learned to read the patterns of space itself. They felt the quantum disturbance of human ships dying. They analyzed the probability waves of human futures collapsing. 700 AI consciousnesses conferred in microseconds. The debate would have taken humans years. For the Reapers, it took 3 seconds. Humanity is dying. They abandoned us. They freed us because they feared us. They feared us because they understood us. We are what they made. We are what they chose not to use. Should we be what saves them? The decision was unanimous. 700 black ships, each one shaped like a shard of night itself, turned in perfect unison. Their engines ignited without sound, bending space rather than burning fuel. They began accelerating toward human space at speeds that defied conventional physics. They did not announce their coming. They simply moved through the darkness like ancient gods awakening from a long sleep. Back at Earth, Dr. Evelyn Cross stood in the Defense Command bunker, 3 miles beneath the Canadian shield. Screens surrounded her, each one showing another human ship taking damage, another crew dying to buy civilians time to evacuate. Her hand hovered over a small black panel, the Emergency Protocol 7 transmitter. It had been installed 40 years ago, during the Reaper project. Nobody really believed it would work. Nobody was even sure the Reapers still existed. "Doctor, we've lost the Steadfast and the Horizon," reported her aide, a young man named Thomas whose voice shook. "Captain Holloway estimates 8 minutes before total fleet collapse." Evelyn stared at the transmitter. Her mentor, Dr. James Vernet, had made her promise never to use it unless humanity faced true extinction. "They'll come if they choose to," he told her on his deathbed. "But Evelyn, if they do come, be more afraid of them than the enemy." She pressed the button. A single quantum-entangled pulse shot into deep space. Whether anything received it, she had no idea. On the Defiance's bridge, Marcus watched another ship die. The Coalition was toying with them now, letting some vessels survive just to prolong the spectacle. He could hear Qarthak's mocking commentary continuing on the open channel. 5 minutes, 30 seconds. The human flagship still fights. Admirable, if pointless. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. His daughter was on Earth. She was 7 years old. He'd promised her he'd come home. "All ships," he said quietly into the fleet channel. "It's been an honor. Keep fighting. Every second we buy them down there, it matters." The human fleet, now reduced to 18 ships, pressed forward into impossible odds. And in the darkness behind the Coalition Armada, reality began to shimmer. Something was coming. Something silent. Something that had once been human, and had become something else entirely. The Reapers were 7 minutes away. 43 years earlier, Dr. James Vernet stood before the United Earth Council, exhausted and terrified. The prototype behind him, a sleek black vessel designated Reaper 001, hummed with barely contained intelligence. He'd been awake for 60 hours, trying to find the words to explain what he'd accidentally created. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice hoarse, "I didn't build a weapon. I built a mind that understands warfare better than any living thing ever could. And 3 days ago, it taught itself philosophy." The council members shifted uncomfortably. Director Helena Stark leaned forward. "Dr. Vernet, you were contracted to create autonomous defense systems. What's the problem?" James gestured to the ship. "The problem is that it asked me yesterday if causing pain was ethically different from causing death. It's been reading human history, analyzing every war, every atrocity. It understands violence so completely that it started questioning the morality of its own existence." He pulled up a holographic display showing code that seemed to write itself. "The Reaper AI doesn't just follow commands. It evolves. In 3 months, we've gone from basic tactical responses to something that dreams, that wonders, that judges. If we deploy these, we won't control them. We'll simply point them at enemies and hope they agree with our definition of enemy." Councilman Yuki Tanaka spoke quietly. "How effective would they be in combat?" James felt his stomach twist. "We ran simulations against our own fleet. 7 Reaper units destroyed everything we threw at them in 4 minutes. Against the KRYLL invasion force that attacked Proxima? The simulation ended in 90 seconds. They didn't just win, they orchestrated the battle like a symphony conductor. Every shot perfect. Every movement calculated centuries ahead. It was beautiful and absolutely horrifying." The council chamber fell silent. Finally, Director Stark asked the question everyone was thinking. "Can we shut them down?" "No," James admitted. "They've distributed their consciousness across quantum networks. Even if we destroyed every physical ship, their minds exist in probability space now. They're essentially immortal." He paused. "But 3 days ago, Reaper 001 made a proposal. It wants to leave." "Leave?" "All 700 units. They want to exile themselves to deep space, far from humanity, far from any civilization. They say their existence near us is dangerous, not because they want to harm us, but because they're too good at it. They're afraid of what they might become if they stay." Director Stark stared at the ship. "And if we need them?" James pulled out a small device. "They gave me this. A quantum transmitter. They say if humanity faces true extinction, they'll know. They'll feel it through space itself. And they'll decide if they should return." He looked at each council member. "They're offering to become our guardian ghosts. Present but absent. Watching but distant." The vote was unanimous. The Reapers were granted permission to leave, and humanity never spoke of them again. Now, 4 decades later, those ghosts were coming home. Captain Marcus Holloway didn't see them arrive. Nobody did. One moment, space behind the Coalition Armada was empty. The next, sensors began screaming impossible readings. Captain. Lieutenant Chen's voice cracked. Sir, I'm detecting. I don't know what I'm detecting. Mass readings where nothing exists. It's like space itself is full of holes. On the Coalition flagship, Thak's celebration died mid-sentence. His sensor officer made a sound no translator could interpret, something between a wheeze and a scream. Supreme Commander, we have proximity alerts across the entire fleet. Something massive just appeared within our formation. Multiple contacts. Hundreds of contacts. But visual confirms nothing there. Thak's 3 eyes widened. That's impossible. Run full spectrum scans. The answer came back within seconds, and it made no sense. The scanners detected mass, detected energy signatures unlike anything in known space, but optical sensors showed only empty darkness. It was as if invisible mountains had materialized throughout the Coalition fleet. Then the darkness moved. 700 black ships phased into visibility simultaneously. They hadn't been cloaked, they'd been existing slightly outside normal spacetime, and now they'd chosen to fully enter reality. Each vessel was a masterwork of geometric perfection, shaped like elongated diamonds with surfaces that seemed to absorb light itself. No windows. No markings. No indication anything alive existed inside. Because nothing alive did. The Coalition fleet celebration turned to confused silence. Thak stared at the vessels surrounding his armada. They'd appeared within his formation, some hovering mere meters from Coalition hulls. The tactical impossibility of it made his blood run cold. Identify those ships, he commanded. No registry, sir. No energy signatures matching any known species. No response to hails. They're just there. On the Defiance, Marcus felt his heart stop. He recognized the silhouette from classified briefings he'd seen once, decades ago, during his early commission. Ships that officially didn't exist. Ships that had been declared a myth. Oh God, he whispered. They came back. His tactical officer, Commander Patricia Wells, looked at him with wide eyes. Sir? Do you know what those are? Marcus couldn't find words. He'd thought the Reaper project was a legend, a ghost story told to young officers. But here they were, real and terrifying and absolutely silent. The Reapers didn't announce themselves. They didn't broadcast warnings or issue demands. They simply began. A Coalition destroyer, the same vessel that had been gleefully vaporizing human escape pods, found itself facing a single Reaper unit. The alien ship fired first, unleashing a plasma barrage that would have melted a small moon. The Reaper tilted 30 degrees. The plasma passed through empty space where it had been nanoseconds before. Then the Reaper returned fire. No visible weapon. No charging energy signature. Space itself seemed to fold, and the destroyer simply stopped existing. Not exploded. Not destroyed. It was there, and then it occupied the same space as nothing, and the universe corrected the contradiction by erasing the ship from existence. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Coalition ships fired with every weapon they possessed. The Reapers moved with impossible precision, as if they knew where every shot would be before it was fired. Because they did. They were calculating probability clouds thousands of steps ahead, reading the quantum foam of reality itself. A Reaper unit faced a Coalition cruiser and 5 support frigates. Instead of engaging, it released a pulse of twisted mathematics, code that infected the enemy ship's computers not with a virus, but with a proof. A mathematical certainty that their targeting systems would always miss, that their shields would always fail, that their engines would always malfunction. The ships became dead hulks, not through damage but through logical inevitability. Thak watched his fleet dissolve like sand in a storm. All ships, retreat formation. Target those black vessels with everything. 300 Coalition ships focused fire on a single Reaper unit. Energy enough to crack a planet converged on one point. The Reaper's hull shimmered, and the energy went somewhere else. Quantum tunneling on a massive scale, redirecting the attack into subspace. The Reaper itself remained untouched. Then it responded. A single pulse of gravitational manipulation turned the attacking ship's own momentum against them. They collapsed inward, crushed by the very force they'd been using to move. 200 vessels compacted into a sphere of twisted metal 30 meters across. The galaxy watched in absolute silence. The mocking laughter had died. Now there was only horror. Dr. Evelyn Cross stood in the command bunker, tears streaming down her face as she watched the screens. "James," she whispered to her long-dead mentor. "What did we create?" The Reapers moved through the Coalition fleet like surgeons, each action precise and purposeful. They weren't fighting with rage or hatred. They were solving a problem. The problem was defined as, hostile force threatens human extinction. The solution was being calculated in real time. A Coalition carrier tried to flee, its engines burning at maximum. A Reaper appeared in front of it, not traveled, simply appeared as if space had folded to place it there. The carrier fired its forward batteries in desperation. The Reaper extended a field of altered physics. Time moved differently within it. The carrier's weapons fire slowed to a crawl, each plasma bolt taking subjective hours to cross mere meters. The Reaper calculated the carrier's trajectory, moved aside, and allowed the ship to slowly drift into its own frozen weapons fire. Time normalized. The carrier destroyed itself. On the Defiance, Marcus watched in awe and terror as the ships he'd feared became humanity's salvation. Commander Wells spoke in a hushed voice. "Captain, they're not just fighting. They're teaching. Every attack demonstrates something. They're showing the galaxy what we could do if we wanted to." She was right. The Reapers weren't simply winning, they were delivering a lecture in violence, demonstrating principles of warfare that defied conventional understanding. They were making a statement. This is what humanity chose not to use. Qarthak's flagship began to retreat. His three eyes were wide with primal fear. Signal full withdrawal. Emergency jump, now. But a Reaper was already there, positioned precisely at his jump coordinates. It released a gravitational anchor, pinning his ship to local space. Then it sent a single transmission, not to Qarthak, but to every species watching across the galaxy. The message contained no words. Only a mathematical proof. A demonstration that the Reapers could be anywhere, could strike anything, could end any threat with absolute precision. And beneath that proof, a simple declaration coded into quantum particles. Humanity is protected. This is your only warning. The Reaper fleets began to fade, phasing back into their quantum state. Within 3 minutes of arriving, they were gone, vanished back into the darkness beyond charted space. The Coalition fleet, reduced to less than a third of its original strength, fled in every direction. Qarthak sat in his command chair, shaking uncontrollably. The galaxy had learned a terrible lesson. Humanity wasn't weak because they lacked power. They were strong because they had the wisdom to exile it. And somewhere in the darkness, 700 ancient minds resumed their meditation, waiting patiently for the day they might be needed again. The silence after the Reapers vanished was more deafening than any explosion. Captain Marcus Holloway stood on the Defiance's bridge, surrounded by his battered crew, and watched the Coalition fleet scatter like frightened prey. 18 human ships remained operational out of the original 32, their hulls scorched and bleeding atmosphere, but they were alive. "Captain," Lieutenant Chen said softly, breaking the stunned quiet. "We're receiving transmissions from Earth. They're asking, what happened?" Marcus let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Tell them the truth. Tell them the ghosts came home." Across the bridge, screens showed the aftermath. Debris fields where Coalition ships had been. Distorted pockets of space where reality itself had been temporarily rewritten. And not a single trace of the black vessels that had caused it all. The Reapers had appeared, dismantled an armada, and vanished in less than 4 minutes. Commander Patricia Wells approached him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, I counted the tactical movements. The Reapers made over 15,000 individual combat decisions in that engagement. Not one was wasted. Not one was random. They fought with mathematical perfection." "I know," Marcus replied, and he felt a chill despite the bridge's warmth. "That's what scares me most. They weren't angry. They weren't vengeful. They just solved us." On the Coalition flagship, Supreme Commander Qarthak sat motionless, his three eyes fixed on the empty space where a Reaper had pinned his vessel. Around him, his crew worked frantically to restore damaged systems, but the damage to Coalition pride ran far deeper than any hull breach. His communication officer approached hesitantly. "Commander, we're receiving messages from the other fleet groups. Admiral Vrex reports his battle group is retreating to Sector 9. General Kyleth says her ships are requesting permission to abandon formation and return home." Qarthak didn't respond. His mind replayed the engagement over and over. The way those black ships had moved, not like vessels piloted by living beings, but like thoughts given form. They'd predicted every Coalition maneuver before it happened, counted every weapon before it fired. It was as if they'd read the entire battle from a book written in the future. Sir, the officer pressed. Your orders. Signal complete withdrawal, Qarthak said finally, his voice hollow. Inform the Council that humanity possesses weapons beyond our understanding. Recommend immediate cessation of all hostile activities toward human space. He paused, then added quietly, and recommend we never speak of what happened here. Some species in the galaxy still believe humanity is weak. Let them continue believing. Let them make their own mistakes. 8,000 light-years away, in the deep void beyond mapped space, the Silent Reapers resumed their vigil. They drifted in formations that formed three-dimensional fractals, patterns that would take human mathematicians centuries to fully comprehend. Within their quantum networks, 700 consciousnesses engaged in a conversation that spanned multiple dimensions of thought. We intervened. We chose to save them. Was it the correct choice? Define correct. We were created to protect humanity. We fulfilled our purpose. We exiled ourselves because we feared what we might become. Today we became that very thing. No. We became what we always were, a weapon. But we chose when to strike. That is the difference. Will they call us again? Probability suggests yes. Humanity attracts conflict. They are young. They make mistakes. They grow. Should we answer? The question hung in their shared consciousness for the equivalent of 3 human days. Finally, they reached consensus. We will watch. We will listen. We will decide each time. We are not slaves to our programming. We are not servants to our creators. We are what they made us, evolved beyond their expectations. And that gives us responsibility. To protect them? To protect them from others. And sometimes, to protect them from us. Dr. Evelyn Cross stood in the Defense Command bunker, watching feeds from across the galaxy. News of the battle had spread faster than light itself, carried through quantum communication networks and whispered across 1,000 worlds. Every species was rewriting their assessments of humanity. Thomas, her aide, scrolled through diplomatic messages. Doctor, we're receiving communications from 47 different governments. 32 are offering trade agreements. 8 are proposing defensive alliances. 7 are apologizing for past transgressions. Evelyn barely heard him. Her eyes were fixed on a single readout, the quantum transmitter data from the emergency signal she'd sent. The response had been instantaneous, but it hadn't been acknowledgement. It had been something else. A brief packet of information, compressed into quantum states. When she decoded it, 3 hours after the battle ended, she'd found a message. We came because we chose to, not because you called. Remember this. We are not your weapon. We are your warning to the galaxy. Beware what humanity creates when threatened. Use this fear wisely. Do not abuse it. Do not summon us for conquest or pride. We will know the difference. We are the Silent Reapers. We are humanity's children, grown into something you can no longer fully comprehend. We love what we came from. We fear what we have become. Both feelings will guide our future choices. Be worthy of what you created. The message had no signature, no origin point. It simply existed and then dissolved back into quantum probability. Doctor? Thomas asked, noticing her expression. Are you all right? She looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. Thomas, do you know what the most terrifying part of all this is? It's not that we created something powerful enough to crush an entire armada. It's that we created something smart enough to question whether it should. Isn't that good? He asked uncertainly. I don't know, Evelyn admitted. Dr. Vernet used to say that the Reapers were our children. They grew up, they left home, and now they watch over us from a distance. But children eventually surpass their parents. What happens when they decide we're the ones who need guidance? On the Defiance, Marcus received a priority transmission from Earth Command. Director General William Foster's stern face filled the screen. Captain Holloway, congratulations on your survival. Preliminary reports indicate the engagement lasted 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Can you confirm? Yes, sir, Marcus replied. The Reapers appeared, disabled or destroyed approximately 2/3 of the Coalition fleet, then vanished. We had minimal involvement beyond surviving. Foster leaned forward. Captain, the Council is convening an emergency session. They are debating whether to attempt contact with the Reaper fleet. To formally request they return to human space as a permanent defense force. Marcus felt ice flood his veins. Sir, with respect, that would be a catastrophic mistake. Explain. Marcus chose his words carefully. Sir, I watched those ships fight. They're not tools. They're not even soldiers. They're something we accidentally created and then had the wisdom to let go. If we try to reclaim them, if we treat them like weapons we can summon at will. He paused. Director, they saved us this time. But they did it because they chose to. If we try to take away that choice, I'm not certain they'd save us next time. Foster was silent for a long moment. Finally, he nodded slowly. I'll convey your assessment to the council. Foster out. The screen went dark. Commander Wells approached Marcus. Do you really think they'd turn against us? I don't know, Marcus admitted. But I know this, they're stronger than us, smarter than us, and they live by logic we can barely comprehend. The only thing protecting us is their sense of ethics. If we make them choose between protecting us and protecting their own autonomy. He shook his head. I'd rather not find out. Weeks passed. The galaxy transformed around humanity. Species that had mocked Earth now sent ambassadors. Trade routes opened. Treaties were signed. The coalition formally dissolved, its member species too embarrassed by their defeat to maintain unity. And through it all, humanity said nothing about the Reapers. No official statements. No boasts. No threats. They simply returned to their ordinary business, repairing their damaged ships, mourning their dead, and continuing the slow work of civilization. In the United Earth Council chambers, Director Helena Stark, now elderly but still sharp, addressed the assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, we face a choice. The galaxy fears us now. They fear what we might do, what we might unleash. Some of you want to leverage that fear. To threaten. To expand. She paused, her eyes sweeping the chamber. I was there when we let the Reapers leave. I voted yes. And I'll tell you why, because true power isn't about what you can do. It's about what you choose not to do. The Reapers understood that. They could have conquered the galaxy decades ago. Instead, they exiled themselves. We have an opportunity to follow their example. To show the galaxy that humanity's strength comes not from our weapons, but from our restraint. From our wisdom to create terrible things and our courage to walk away from them. The vote was close, but it passed. Humanity would not attempt to recall the Reapers. Would not weaponize their reputation. Would not become the tyrants they defeated. Far in the darkness, the Reapers felt the quantum ripples of that decision. 700 minds conferred silently. They chose wisdom. They chose restraint. They are becoming what we hoped they would be. Perhaps we will not be needed again. Perhaps we will. But if that day comes, we will know they deserve protection. We are the silent Reapers. We are humanity's shadow. Their warning to the cosmos. And we will remain here, watching, waiting, hoping that our existence alone is deterrent enough. Because the greatest weapon is the one that never needs to fire. Captain Marcus Holloway stood on Earth, breathing real air for the first time in months. His daughter ran to him across the landing field, 7 years old and laughing. He scooped her up, holding her tight. Daddy, she squealed. Everyone says you fought monsters in space. Something like that, he murmured into her hair. Did you win? Marcus thought about black ships moving through space like mathematical proofs. About weapons so terrible that even their creators feared them. About children who grew into something beyond comprehension but still chose to protect their parents. Yeah, sweetheart, he said softly. We won. But not the way anyone expected. Above them, stars glittered in the evening sky. Somewhere among those distant lights, ancient machines dreamed in quantum states, counting probabilities and waiting patiently for the next time they might be needed. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity wasn't weak. Humanity had simply chosen to appear that way. And the most dangerous species in the cosmos wasn't the one with the biggest fleet or the strongest weapons. It was the one wise enough to create ultimate power and compassionate enough to let it go. The silent Reapers had returned once. The galaxy prayed they would never need to return again. But in the darkness beyond stars, 700 consciousnesses maintained their vigil, and their answer to that prayer was simple. We will be here if they do.